So in the last video, I updated wayswemage.com and made an interface for adding cards to the items that you add to lists. So if you are making a top 10 list, if you are making a list of great sideboard cards, if you're making a list of cards with cool art, now you can structure your list so that those cards will be visible all the time, not just when the cursor is hovering over the card's name. And that interface is functional, but it is not, uh, it, I'll go ahead and say it's not usable. It's because when the user comes to the site and they're not me, they don't know how it works, they're going to try to use it and they're not going to know if it's working. So in order to make it usable, we'll add some feedback, and that will basically take two or three forms. One will be if they fail, it will say that card was not added. We couldn't find that card. If they succeed, then it will display the card, and it will probably also clear the text out of the text box so they can start to type another if they choose. And then further down the road, there might be a case where if we allow a fuzzy match instead of an exact match, then their text they submit might match multiple cards. And so the third case would be you match multiple cards, and then we will come up with an interface to allow them to specify which one they meant. So first, let's open up this interface and get ready to use it. I guess I'll just begin a new list here. So I'm going to make a list rares, or I'll just say black creatures. And I'll make it randomized. I'll make it numbered for a change. And I'm going to jump into my handiest reference here. The wrong one. I'm looking for the card image galleries. There we go. Okay, let's go to Amonkhet. And let's see some lovely black creatures. Okay, good ones. Wow, these are all so good. I like this one. We're going to start with this guy. Okay. Wasteland Scorpion. My interface is getting a little twisted here because it's not wide enough. This is what it's supposed to look like. We can fix that by adjusting the width of these here. So we'll go to the lists this form has elements that are 400 pixels wide. I'll search in my style sheet. For 400. And let's try that as 30%. Okay. Let's try it as 80%. That's still not going to be very good. Okay. So I'm going to have to attach a style to its containing div. So I'll go into the lists. Go into the lists helper, listed items helper. Look at this form. The div class is inline. And should I give it an ID or a class? I think I should give it a class because there might be more than one of these on a page. So I'll give it a class of list content, listed item content. And so I have the inline div here, an inline div which is also listed item content will receive the style which is width of 45%. Okay, so let's see how this responds to resizing. Okay, so it only gets down to this width. And I have another layout issue, which is that this element is having its width defined by the length of the name, the longest name of a list that's currently in the system. I haven't come up with a really great interface for this, but I love the nested lists concept. So how much did we get out of this? So we got a little bit more squeezability. This interface down here is also struggling to make do with the width that I'm working at. So this might be a situation where I need to add some breakpoints and say that when the layout dips below a certain width, then I come up with some new rules. Anyway. Okay. So there's another layout issue. So I moved the editing tools up above the designation, and now it's not contiguous with the number. So let's see if we can work that out. Okay, so the editing tools are above the number in the markup. They are floating right, and The markup is a normal layout type, which is on the left. Number of listed item. It's slated to be displayed as an inline block, as is this. So it's not totally obvious to me why these are not displaying in the same place. Okay. So I'm guessing that this one, the designation is wide enough. Yeah. So I've given it enough width that it can't coincide with the editing tools. Okay. So moving the editing tools out of the layout would be great. And I think the way to lay them on top is to do absolute and relative positioning. Let's see what happens real quick. If I make the editing tools position absolutely, right 0, top 0. Okay, so yeah, they jam all the way up to the very top of the page. They're no longer inside this thing at all. And relative, I'm guessing, is not going to do anything. Yeah. So I'm not quite sure how to position them in the corner of a div that's not absolutely positioned. So I'm going to go back to basically what I was doing. Okay. I have a thought here. Maybe the reason why this can't go on the same spot, yeah. So it's 100% was pushing away from this. It wasn't actually, it wasn't only a situation where the editing tools were breaking the layout. So editing tools breaking the layout is an annoyance, but since that's only going to be visible to the person creating the list, not the people reading the list, it's not a deal breaker. So for the time being, we're going to live with that. And let's see what happens if we shrinky dinky dink. Okay, so the 90% appears to be more than enough leeway for the number to be there on the left. I do want the, I'm going to go up to 98, see what happens. Let's stick around 94. Okay, and now we could be in a situation where numbers like 2-digit numbers or 3-digit numbers are gonna impact that, and we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Okay, so now I'm gonna include a card. Okay, so currently my data or my system is going to match this submission against the data from MTG JSON. So it's going to be case sensitive, and it's also going to be sensitive to punctuation, commas, dashes, which I think is a pretty good interface because it's Magic cards are, they're easy enough to spell. They are, it's easy to copy and paste if you need to. We will be moving on from this interface eventually, but using some kind of a fuzzy match to allow people to, if there's a spelling error, then it will still return results. For now, what I want to do is start getting some feedback into this interface so they know whether their card was included without refreshing the page. Probably the correct interface for this is to have a edit link that will display the whole menu. So I'll let that simmer a little bit and see what I come up with. Okay, so when I punch in that text and submit it to my application, it comes in here. Goes through this logic, and then we're going to send back some feedback, which basically happens right after this end. So I'm going to go into card inclusions, create a file which is named after that action, and we're going to have a couple of cases. If card inclusion dot valid. Okay, so we're going to ask if it was saved, or else something else. Asking if it's valid is pretty much the same as asking if it was saved, because it's only going to be saved if it is valid. But persisted is the most direct way to ask if it was saved. And there are some differences between those two things. Asking if it's valid will run through the validations, and we already did that, so we don't want to do it again. So this is the fun one. We get to show the card. We're basically going to say where are we doing it, and then what are we putting in there. Okay. So the where are we doing it that we're putting those card images into the expression. We're putting it before the expression itself, so I can prepend to the expression of listed item. Listed item, expression of, and then I'll say prepend, and then get myself one of these. I can move this into a card helper. Card display. Okay, now I can replace this with display card. And here I can say card display card. Okay, so looking at the controller that is resulting here, I don't have a listed item, so it's actually going to be card inclusion.piece, which is going to be supplying that DOM ID. Okay, take a peek at whether this looks correct so far. Okay, so I didn't close that Ruby tag, and I think I have a card. Yeah. Great. Okay. So going back to my cheat sheet here. I'll go with this guy, Plague Belcher. Oops, wrong thing. Include card. All right. Nice quick feedback there. So then the other thing we want to do is probably clear out this form so that they can know that it's that they're done with that now. So let me see what this form is called. Okay, so this form doesn't have a class or an ID. I am going to give it an ID which is based on the listed item ID. So that is the form which in the previous video we concocted that in here. Okay, so now we can go in here, use jQuery to target that DOM ID. And then, since reset is not a jQuery method, but it's a raw JavaScript method, what we do is we pull out the first element from that jQuery collection, and we call reset on that. It's also possible to call out this element by ID and just set the value of it instead of calling reset on the form in its entirety. I'm not sure what reset will do to the value of these hidden fields. I think they will probably remain. We can test that out in just a moment. What I'm saying is that I think Rails, these form helpers, used to spit out an ID in each one of these inputs, but now they currently just have a name, no ID. So if anyone knows why that was changed or how to change it back, please let me know. I mean, I know how to put the ID in there manually, but I would like it for there to always be an ID when I'm using the Rails form helpers. Okay, so let's add another item. Okay, so that is a good positive case for us. We did a little styling there. We made a little card helper, gave an ID to the form, and we made the feedback for a person who is, okay, feedback. Okay, so card appears after being included in listed item. So now the negative case is when basically there's a misspelling. We'll just call it that. So we're going to grab this and then insert a little message there. Try to make a nice, polite phrasing there, but still explain what happened. Okay, so that broke the layout, but at least there's some good feedback. And then if they go ahead and manage to spell it right, yeah. So I did that on purpose to show you guys that it's currently possible to attach the same card to a listed item more than once, and I have not created any way to remove things that are attached. So that's just an example of how using the interface tends to be the thing that gives you insight on just how bulletproof the, well, not bulletproof, but just flexible and durable. Speaking of flexible, it might be cool for some of these items to have multiples of the same card. That could be the correct formatting for some types of lists. Like, for example, if your list was a sideboard list, or even a deck list. Yeah, perfect for a deck list. So Still on the fence about whether to allow multiples of the same card, but thinking that I probably should make it possible to remove a card. Maybe that could be a feature of the edit form. Sometimes that's a good way to manage associated data, is to kind of shove it into that interface. Okay, so I mentioned the third case of what is possible when people submit this, which is a fuzzy match, where their submission matches more than one thing. Now, I've thought about this, whether I want to implement logic for that kind of a match, and I think that what I'm going to do instead is lean on Scryfall's API, because they have implemented it, and they will permit me to do this. They'll permit you to do it too. Searching. I'm not sure if this is the correct page. How odd. Okay. So the fuzzy search, ostcom returns austere command. And so at that point, I can match their results against my data and display an interface to the user where they can select which one they want to add. I'll make that in a separate video. In the meantime, go ahead onto wayswemage.com and start making your lists, and you can see if having multiple cards of the same card in a listed item is going to work for you.